Today I'm going to show you an unconventional way to dry flowers. Let's go.
This season, we're proud to partner with Advancing Eco-Agriculture, providing regenerative solutions for growers, and greencoverseed.com.
Every year at the flower farm, I like to preserve a lot of our flowers. Not only because, quite frankly, I just grow so many that I'm not always able to keep up with selling them all, but also because I like to use the dried ones over the winter. You can see over on the left side of the barn, we do dry and hang in bunches as well. But the way I'm going to be showing you today is just a lot more fun. So if you have a space where you can do a little hanging installation, this is what you're going to try. So I've got some paddle wire here, and that paddle wire is just a nice thick gauge. That's what I'm going to use to attach our chicken wire to our roof trusses. So this is our workshop barn space, and in this space we have a lot of workshops during the growing season. We do flower arranging classes, we do evergreen workshops in the winter. And so it's definitely a gathering space. It's a space that's photographed quite a bit. So it's nice to have a little bit of a hanging installation. So again, this is going to be a great way to dry flowers, but also it's going to look really nice in the meantime. Now I'm just using a regular 1-inch chicken wire. This is a 3-foot long roll of that chicken wire, and we use this a lot. So when we're making our arrangements in vases, we also use the same chicken wire to cut and use instead of floral foam. So a lot of times if a florist is doing an installation like this, they'll use floral foam. We like to use chicken wire because floral foam isn't the best for the environment. This is the yarrow that we're going to be using today to kind of form the backdrop of our, what I call our cloud of hanging flowers. So this is Firefly Peach Skies yarrow. It's a cultivar of the yellow native yarrow, and it kind of skews a little bit peachy, especially when it first starts to bloom. It's a little bit more pink, and then as it ages, it does turn this yellowy tone. I like to harvest my yarrow with a sickle. If you've watched our yarrow videos before, I've shown this in detail, and I also showed how to use the sickle recently in videos as well. It's just a much faster and efficient way to do this. Now, this is after the yarrow has kind of stopped blooming for the year, but before it started to go to seed. So deadheading it is going to be good for the plants. I might get a little bit of a second bloom, and then also it leaves the stick part of the yarrow, the stem part of the yarrow, creates a little opening that I found the native bees like to nest in over the winter. So it's actually good for pollinators that were harvesting it at this point, and quite frankly, they were not visiting this yarrow anymore anyway because it was past its peak bloom. So you can harvest it a little bit earlier than we do if you're drying. If you want a little bit more of a potent color, this has already started to fade out a little bit, but that's up to you. So once I've got my bunches of yarrow, I'm just making handfuls, and this is a little bit of practice that it takes. I'm probably using about 6 or 7 stems in each one, and you can see I've left the leaves on. So I've left the leaves on because that's helping hold it in place in this chicken wire. And then it's a bit of a trick of finding the right size of bunch so that you can just stick it up and through the chicken wire and it'll stay. So I'm not bunching it and wrapping it in a rubber band or in wire before I stick it through. I'm literally just taking bunches of yarrow and stuffing it straight in. So you want a little bit of resistance as you're sticking it into the chicken wire. Otherwise, it's probably going to fall out as it dries because those flowers do shrink a little bit as they lose moisture and dry out. So I'm going along. Again, the yarrow is going to be the backdrop of this cloud. It's kind of the filler. I was thinking about other places you could build one of these. You could also use it kind of to flank a fireplace or around a window in your kitchen, maybe over a stove. Of course, you want to be very careful if you're using dried flowers near any combustibles. Make sure that you're maintaining appropriate clearances and all of that good stuff. But you could really put this anywhere in your house. Of course, now that I said that, I know the next question you're wondering is, does it make a mess? So at the end of the video, I'll show you kind of the cleanup that was required after we built this. But yes, I mean, it will drop a little bit, and some of that depends on what stage you're harvesting these flowers at. So I mentioned that we've harvested this yarrow kind of after its peak bloom. So that means it's kind of starting to set seed a little bit, and it's going to be dropping a little bit more than it would if we'd harvested it earlier. So that's in generally true for most flowers that we are cutting and drying, is that the earlier we cut them to dry, the less they're going to drop seeds and make a mess. So if you are putting inside your house, you might want to harvest those blooms a little bit on the earlier side. Next up, I'm going to be cutting some drops of Jupiter oregano. This is one of my favorite fillers, and I show it a lot here on the channel because I like it in its green stage. It lasts a long time in the vase. And then I also like it when it's blooming. It blooms these really pretty purple flowers. You can see Cora's carrying them to the barn, and it's going to be a little bit of a viney effect hanging down. So this is something new we're adding this year, the oregano. You can see how it's kind of trailing out, and we're just popping this in here and there. You could use any kind of greenery for this, but of course, if it's a greenery that's going to hold well while it dries, that's going to be a little bit better, and oregano does dry quite well. This year I wanted to do some pops of blue. This is one of my favorite blue flowers, especially for drying. This is called echinops, blue glow. And I love this one for drying because it really holds that nice true blue color even as it dries. So it will fade a little bit. And of course, that's true of all dried flowers, is if they're in direct exposure to sunlight, then yes, they're going to fade a little bit. So if you want to keep the true colors of the flowers, the less sun exposure they have wherever you're drying them, the better. Now, of course, this is our barn. We have big windows and doors all around, so it's not a dark environment by any means. So yes, this does get a little bit lighter as it ages, and it does fade a little bit in the colors, but for the most part, it holds true to this color palette. So that's why I really like using this yellow yarrow, the blue echinops, and this purple oregano, because they specifically dry really well. Some other ones that you could consider using in this include straw flower. Straw flower tends to dry very well, especially if you harvest it before it's fully open. You could also use things like peonies, actually dry really well. Lisianthus dries well. Surprisingly, we've had a little bit of luck drying dahlias and zinnias, but we use silica for that. I'll do a separate video on that here coming up this fall. We built one of these clouds last year with all yarrow, and actually we were able to make it a little bit bigger. And interestingly, I just noticed that this year our yarrow did not look as good as the previous couple of years. So some of that comes down to just the way that yarrow grows. This is its fourth year here at the farm, and yarrow can be a little bit of a short-lived perennial. It likes to spread, but not necessarily keep going for a long time, if that makes sense. So a short-lived perennial usually looks good for the first few years and then likes to be replanted. So we'll be dividing this yarrow and replanting it in the spring to help it be a little bit healthier. I think some of it also comes down to just growing conditions. It was a bit of a weird year for us here, and it got a little bit more rain than I think it usually does. And yarrow just doesn't really like that much moisture, that much precipitation. It really prefers a dry soil, kind of a poor soil, to be honest. It is. So I did shut off the irrigation on our yarrow row to make sure that it's not getting too much water. That's a problem that I see a lot with people growing yarrow and having trouble, is that it just really doesn't want that much. Now, if you look at the native distribution range for yarrow, it's native to much of the northern hemisphere. So pretty much wherever you are, if you're in the northern hemisphere, there is a yarrow that is native. Now, usually the straight native versions are either white or yellow. I mentioned that this is a cultivar called Firefly Peach Skies. So cultivars can be a little bit controversial in that some people will say they don't have the same pollinator benefits. We do see a lot of pollinator activity on this variety. It is very similar in color to the native version, and we do also use this one medicinally. So usually what we do is we dry it and we use it as a styptic powder, which means we use it for wound healing. So if someone gets a cut and they're bleeding, we use the dried leaves, we crush them up into a powder, and we put it on the wound. So we do use it that way. It does help stop bleeding. We have found that it has very similar benefits both for pollinators and medicinally as the straight native version. But if you want the straight native, look for that white or yellow. But those ones do tend to spread a little bit more. So the other nice thing about this yarrow cultivar is that it doesn't reseed nearly as aggressively as those white and yellow ones. So a lot of people stray away from yarrow because it can be an aggressive spreader. The nice thing about this cultivar, again, is that it doesn't tend to spread as rapidly. If you're wanting to ask me where you get seeds for this one. Unfortunately, I've only ever been able to find this one as a plug. So you could propagate it, but again, not going to be able to grow this one from seed. Now, of course, whenever we're done building one of these, there's a lot of cleanup because we get a lot of leaves and stuff all over the ground. Here, Savannah and I are working out how to do our high five to congratulate each other for a job well done. And thanks to everyone who came and helped out at the farm on this one. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, learning about how to make a yarrow cloud. Let me know if you're going to try making one of these at home and where you're going to put it, and if you have any other fun ideas for how you could incorporate a nice dried flower display like this into your home. Post it down below. And until then, don't forget to like, subscribe. It means a lot to us here at the farm, and we'll see you guys around here next time.